Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of Hot Takes. It's our last episode for the regular season here for Grandmasters Season 2. My name is TJ, and I'm joined by Sottle. Sottle, how are you today, man?
Feeling a little bit under the weather today, TJ, I'm going to be honest, so you're going to have to be kind to me in this, our season finale of the sequence of hot takes, because I just don't have the mental brain power to stand up to your usual level of torture. So I hope you'll show some compassion during this episode.
Like I do every week. Got it.
Yes.
We had I'd say a fun weekend of Solarian Prime. I mean Hearthstone. And I think we can just jump right into some hot takes. Hot take number 1. The most heartwarming victory of this past weekend belongs to blank.
Easy start, TJ. The answer to this question is A-Rock. I think regardless, this is probably going to come out of one of the relegation matchups. I think those are the most heartwarming stories when a player secures their survival. And just seeing how much it means to A-Rock and how passionate he was when he won and secured his survival did quite literally warm my heart at the time, because some of these newer players that we have that we don't know that much about, they might not have played the best over the course of the season. That's why a few of them ended up in the relegation bracket to begin with. But the one thing I don't think you can accuse any of them of is phoning it in. And that's 100% true for A-Rock. And personally, I think if we had a lot more players of that same ilk who weren't necessarily already the best players, but were grinding super hard to improve and one day might get there, I think Grandmasters would be in a better place. So I'm all for rooting for the underdog here in terms of survival. And I think A-Rock will continue now to grow and blossom and potentially go on to bigger and better things in future GM seasons.
Well, I'm going to take your little idea there and run with it. Very similarly, I think the most heartwarming victory from the past weekend was Rami. Rami is a player who, to be honest with you, he's had some rough times over his first season in Grandmasters. I guess, similar to A-Rock. But he managed to, despite being in the very last spot for relegation, win his match against Just Saying to stay in Grandmasters. And he made a tweet saying that, he may be the 15th best player in Grandmasters, but, he worked harder than everybody else to try and make up for that. And I feel like that's cool, because I feel like there's a lot of players in Grandmasters, specifically Americas, who have a lot of Hearthstone talent, but they just don't work for it. They don't work to hone that, and so it gets kind of wasted. And so seeing a player like that, it's heartwarming. I like it. Makes me smile.
Me too, TJ. I almost threw that in there in my answer as well, that if you wanted to argue Rami on the same grounds, I wouldn't really dispute it. So I propose, not quite a second in hot takes, TJ, that we just agree with each other here and just take the heartwarming story on both sides from our respective regions.
I agree. And I'm really glad that you didn't mention Rami in your answer, because that would have meant that you had two answers, which means you would have been disqualified. So,
dodged the bullet there.
Close call there, but yeah, we will agree to agree.
Nice.
All right, hot takes number 2. The most improved player award this season should be given to blank. Ooh.
Well, TJ, I think it's just ETC, isn't it? I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but partly because that's your job on the show. But, you having the closer view of it in the Americas region, I feel like ETC, maybe just with the pressure off with obviously his announcement that he will potentially be leaving GM after this season. I think with no pressure on him, he just got to go out there, have fun, try and relegate some extra kids by opening up more spots in the Americas. And I think it showed that with the pressure off, he was able to just rotate through a bunch of lineups, bring a bunch of different strategies that he found interesting, and play some kind of low pressure Hearthstone, which I think created a massive improvement over in his play over the previous seasons that we've seen. So I would certainly just go ahead and nominate ETC here.
I can't argue with that. So I'm going to take the same answer, but I'm going to go for a little bit of a different approach to it.
Okay.
I think pretty much everybody else in America's got worse. So ETC could have just stayed the same. And still roped out a couple turns, still looked incredibly nervous, still looked like he had a ton of pressure on his shoulders, and he probably still would have been the most improved, because staying the same in Americas right now feels like a big improvement. That's throwing a lot of shade, but I've been, outside of a couple key matchups this weekend, I've been pretty disappointed with the overall level of play. But yes, ETC, he said in the interview that I had with him that it does feel like he's having more fun now that he knows that he's not playing to stay in Grandmasters. He's playing to give other people a shot, and he's just playing to enjoy himself. And that's cool to see. He succeeded in his goal. Maybe not his second ultimate goal of making it to a world championship, but taking second to a player that has been his practice partner's friend since the very beginning is just nice. It's nice. So, yeah, I would say ETC.
Just when you thought it wasn't possible for Americas to get any worse, TJ comes in with a bullet and says that it's happened. Unbelievable scenes here on Hot Takes.
Hey, I didn't mention any of the other regions and how bad they're getting.
Dude, our relegation match in Europe was better than any other match in any other region all weekend, okay? Don't at me.
All right, sure, whatever. I'm going to say that because I didn't watch it. It was too early for me. All right. Let's go to hot take number 3. The way too early World Championship favorite should be blank.
Well, TJ, you said you didn't watch the relegation match, but if you watch the rest of the broadcast, I don't see any way that you'll be able to argue with me on this one either, because the correct answer here is Yala. Hunter Ace called it out months ago. He said that Yala was unbeatable. He was the best player he's ever seen at this point, and that Yala was going to take Worlds this year and no one could stop him. It took us a little while to come around to that. I think slowly throughout the season, Raven and I warmed to him, and from just being a top-tier competitor in European Grandmasters to potentially just being the standout. Highest win rate overall, consistently solid play, but it's just when you saw him enter his comfort zone again towards the end of the season, when he completely shattered a meta that everyone thought was about created by and unsolvable games, and he boiled it back down to good old-fashioned Hearthstone, where you just had solved games in with control decks in Fatigue, where optimal play gets rewarded 100% of the time, and Yala was just dissecting people back and forwards. He had unfavored series with what essentially should have been a concede lineup against a couple of the lineups that he came up against, and was still able to outmaneuver his opponents to get over the line. Yala is odds on in my mind right now to take home the World Championship. He's that good.
Yarla is pretty good. I would say maybe slightly above decent as a player. Just very so ever slightly above decent. If I had to pick a way too early World Championship favorite, this one may be controversial because of where he stood at the end of the Grandmaster season, but I'm going to say Bloody Face. His record also speaks for itself. When you're referencing Yarla statistics, Bloody Face got passed barely this season by Eddie in terms of overall win rate, I believe, or they're very close to tied. But Bloody Face's resume beyond that is incredibly impressive, back-to-back championships, and he just lost motivation at the end of the Grandmaster season. He realized that he was pretty much safe from relegation because he's like the top earner in Americas, like right behind Briarthorn or something like that. And he's already going to the World Championship, so it just looked like he kind of checked out, and his gameplay suffered from it as well. But I think you give him a new metagame, you give him the much bigger prize pool of a World Championship to fight for. And that drive kind of comes back. So I'm going to say Bloody Face. He was a runner-up last year, and you can't even argue that would be a better story than Yarla winning. Is making it to back-to-back-to-back World Championships and slowly creeping up in standing, getting runner-up the year before, and then winning the year after. Be a better story.
I mean, I would counter by saying just because it's a good story doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen, but that's of course nonsense, because we all know that Hearthstone has the best scriptwriters in the business, so I'm sure that the best story will occur once we all get around the round table, so yeah, maybe you've got a point.
And I'm pretty sure his name is Jarla.
Okay.
Didn't he say his name was Jarla?
I think it's become one of those things where eventually players are just like, I don't care. Like Felkane says it's Felkane, but if like a lot of people still say it a bunch of different ways, and he says he doesn't care. So I think it just becomes lost knowledge at some point what these players' actual names are.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of for like a good 2 or 3 months that everybody called Savitz Savages. Savages,
yeah.
And just thought it was
That's just a better name, though.
And
that
thought
should
it was
be
like
his name.
A creative name to say Savages, which I always loved. But you know what else I love, Sawdall? I love when we can come to the end of a Hot Takes episode and just sit back and agree with each other on everything. We can agree that stories are heartwarming. We can agree that America sucks. And we can agree that nobody can possibly predict how to pronounce the J in the beginning of Yarla's name. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this one a tie. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to call this one a tie. I am going to declare a winner. And the winner is all of you watching. Because for the first time ever, you got to see me and Sato agree on hot takes.
You're welcome, dear viewers. I hope your hearts are warmed.
Just kidding. I win this episode. Make sure you guys tune in 2 weeks for the Masters Tour Madrid online. We also have the EMEA BG Cup coming up this weekend. And you can check that out on youtube.com/Hearthstone. I believe it's going to be on twitch.tv as well. So make sure you guys tune into all that stuff. It's going to be great. Thanks, Sottle. I got to make fun of you at some point this episode. So I don't know. Your predictions are bad. Whatever. See you guys next time for more hot takes.